So we can go to our third speaker, who is Maximilian Majer. And there's nothing to hide, as I already mentioned you that he's my business partner. And we are both established ITCraftship. And Max, as a CEO, helps companies to find the great engineers, also focusing on the hybrid mobile developers. Max is also a software engineer with over 14 years of experience. He got big experience regarding the Ionic application. He worked with it over 5 years, starting with beta version of Ionic 1. So Max's topic will be get it out there, the benefits of continuous delivery for Ionic applications. So please welcome Max.
Okay, thank you, everyone. I want to speak actually about the continuous delivery process and how it fits into a QA assurance, quality assurance process for software products, because this is an area that interests me quite a lot. Maciej already gave a little bit of background about me. So I've been building apps for over 14 years, mostly worked as a remote software engineer, and this is why I like to promote this work style very much with our business and with what I'm doing. And to skip ahead to 5 years back, we actually were hired by a Norwegian startup to build a hybrid mobile application. And as a fun fact, most of our team, development team, is actually here in the room, so we have a small reunion. And when we started off as a 3-people team, we were supposed to build the application in Xamarin Framework. We had a lot of experience with .NET and web development with .NET, but also desktop, and Maciej had Xamarin experience, the only one of us. But after working with it for a few weeks, we realized that we're stumbling upon many hurdles. And we decided that we need to experiment with something that's going to get us results faster. This is when we decided to try out Cordova and Ionic Framework. Ionic Framework was in beta now, so I started with it a little bit later than Szymon. And we realized that it's really great. The learning curve was not very steep for us. We were web developers, so developing anything in Cordova was super easy. We were able to solve the problems we couldn't solve with Xamarin in a few days. That took us weeks with Xamarin Framework. And so basically, for the last 5 years, I really enjoyed working with the newer and newer versions of Ionic, so I have experience across all the different versions from 1 till 4. And with version 4, I worked also with Vue.js. And the source code for the presentation that I'm going to share with you today is actually with the React version. So most of you, I assume, are developers here. Please raise your hand if you enjoy testing the features that other guys or girls on your team have completed. Okay, not many hands there. So I've seen that across many teams when leading some agile projects. And in many cases, also on the project that we were working all together a few years ago, the QA column was constantly hitting limits. We were seeing issues. It was slowing us down. And since I don't like that, I like continuous improvement. I hate when I hit the limits, when I see red on my board. I thought that we got to do something about that. And the solution was pretty straightforward. Just hire a dedicated QA person. They will just test everything that we built. That's awesome. And as a matter of fact, it did work really well, because a part-time person that we actually outsourced from a different company, after 2 sprints, we have increased our velocity, our development velocity, only over 2 times. So consider just the return on investment. If we wanted to develop more, you'd normally hire more developers, but that is very costly and wouldn't necessarily produce any better results. But hiring a half-time QA person was a much better ROI, and the cost for the company was smaller. But then, there's a whole other set of challenges. So when you have a QA person, that now you need to decide at what stages of your product development lifecycle do you do the tests? What kind of tests are you doing? Okay, so you could get away with one or two environments for like the production development, but now you need to have an environment for your QA person or QA people to be able to test the application and not be affected by whatever you screw up on the development side, or if you don't want to push something into the production before you've actually tested it. Another thing is basically how do you deliver the application to your QA people? When do you deliver that to the QA people so that they're able to test? And lastly, how do you make sure that they're testing the right version, the right build of your application? Because I've seen it many times that issues were being pulled back to the development just because the person downloaded the wrong build from App Center or Hockey App or whatever we were using. So I want to, before I go into the technical part, I want to share what is the desired continuous delivery flow that I wanted to set up and that I've set up in this and other projects as well. So first of all, of course, we have the development phase. So a developer is working on a feature. Usually you're going with some kind of branching strategy, either Git flow or you're going with trunk-based development. So on your developer master branch, you have a version that is either the deployed to staging or production. And then when you work on a feature, you create a feature branch. You do some commits. I personally like to commit frequently and push to the remote frequently so that I get feedback from my CI server if anything didn't pass, if any test, automated test failed. And after you're done with the feature, you want to obviously create a pull request or a merge request, something that we can make sure that it's complete. We identify the point at which we have completed the feature, and we want other people to take a look at that. So one low-hanging fruit that you can handle here as far as quality assurance process is obviously with using TypeScript. You have linting, you have compilation, which is something that you can do either on the CI, but you could also do it as Git hooks, for example, or pre-commit or pre-push, depending on how much time that takes, because you also don't want to introduce bottlenecks and mess up with your development experience if things like pushing to the repository take too long. But this is like the first step. When you've created your pull request, what I like to have is creating a build with only that feature included. So that obviously, included means added to the previous version. Because I don't like to have my development or my master branch unstable. I want to have features merged only if they meet the acceptance criteria that were defined with the task, with the feature that we're working on. And in order to do that with trunk-based development, you're usually rebasing your feature. You're rebasing on top of master. And when you're testing the branch, you're testing a version that master will be after you've merged the PR. With a Git flow approach, you can create a merge commit, then run the tests, of course. So this is also possible. And what I want to do then is actually create a binary build so that the QA person can make sure that all the acceptance criteria are being met, test the application, go through it, check the feature, and then approve it. So they would approve it in the repository. They would make an approval on your pull request. The CI server would run the automated builds and any linting, compilation, whatever is needed. It would also approve, and then I would like to have another peer developer on your team look at the code, just to have like a quality check. So this is like the first step, the isolated feature tests. Once we got the PR approved, we're merging that, and then it goes on to develop or master. And this is when I want to kick off another build, because I want to have at least one build always with the newest version of the development or the master branch, so that the QA person can always have an easy access to the newest version, and they can continue with the integration tests. They can go through the critical paths of the application, make sure that they work prior to the release if you're planning that. Also, this is a good point to run any of your UI tests. So any end-to-end test that you want to execute, this is the right moment. I do not recommend running them on every commit or even on every merge to the develop branch, rather something to do on a nightly basis, for example, because they usually take a lot of time and they can break. Sometimes you have to just maintain them as well. And I don't recommend having a large coverage of that, only focus on the really important parts of your application. So say you're working on a mobile e-commerce app, then you'd want to check adding to the cart, completing the checkout process, payment process, things like that. So focus on the most important parts. And lastly, when you want to do the release, you could also have some nice trigger. For example, if you're making a tag on your master branch, you're pushing that to the remote, the CI server could pick up that a new tag has been pushed, and it would create actually run the release that would push to the App Store or Google Play, and then you could manually submit that for review or publish the app. So what options do you have to deliver the application to your QA people and later on to deliver those to the app stores? So when you have a small team, when you're at the beginning of the project, you usually, with 1-2 developers, you can easily get away with just building manually. That's how many projects start. You wouldn't necessarily set up the whole CI/CD pipeline from the beginning. You want to go fast, develop fast, and this is not a time where you're going to be releasing very frequently, where you're going to be pushing very frequently. So you can easily build using Ionic CLI, and you can open up Xcode or Android Studio if you're using Capacitor to actually build the binaries, sign them, upload them manually to the App Store or any delivery that you want to use for the QA purposes. And that's all cool. But then the code base starts to grow, the team grows, there are more and more features. You want to be able to test them. You're hitting the bottleneck that I described before. You're switching contexts a lot. The developers are building instead of producing code. It's becoming a mess. And when that happens, you have several options to automate your build flow. The most obvious choice that Szymon already mentioned is using Ionic App Flow. This is an obvious choice because it's being created by the Ionic team, so it integrates really nicely with the whole ecosystem. But it's also quite limited. If you want to do any complex integrations or any complex workflows, for example, run your UI tests and execute them in Appium, for example, or if you want to notify Slack that a build has completed or update a Jira ticket with the link to the latest build, if you're using App Center, for example, for distributing to your QA team, then this is not something that you can easily handle with Ionic App Flow. And I already mentioned that I'm very passionate about processes and continuous improvement. I really don't like people to give people the flexibility to make errors. I try to remove the human errors as much as possible. So I already mentioned to you that many times it happened that people didn't test on the right version. And you can easily get rid of that problem if you, for example, push a comment to the Jira ticket or whatever issue tracking system you're using with the latest link to your App Center, and that eliminates a lot of problems. The QA person just goes opens up Jira on their mobile device, they go to the ticket, they scroll down to the comments, hit the last comment, the link there, pull up the version, test it on the device, no problems there, right? We're removing the human errors, and everyone makes errors. Software engineers, engineering managers, support staff, and QA people on your team. So the more you can simplify that, the more productive they will be, and the process will be more streamlined. So this is why I would still decide to go with a custom build server. And right now you have quite a few options, because obviously for iOS development, you need a built CI server that has built agents running on macOS. But a few years ago, when I was starting, it was not possible. We had to have a Mac Mini in our office running Jenkins, maintain that, update that, make sure that the Xcode is updated all the time, take care of all the maintenance. I would not advise that today. I would advise against that. And today you have many other options. You have Circle CI, Travis CI, the Bitrise. They all handle macOS machines. And you have Azure DevOps, which I want to explore today because it actually is a pretty nice alternative. And just to shortly tell you about the whole CI pipeline, like what happens there is basically this short slide. Firstly, we of course want to test our app, like run any test automation, not necessarily for each PR and not very frequently the UI tests. Then we want to compile the binary versions of the application, and for the purpose of iOS, we also want to code sign them before we can release them. And then we want to upload them either to a distribution center like App Center, previously Hockey App, or directly to App Store Connect, so we can use it with test flight, or to Google Play, so we can use it with like alpha, beta lanes, or before we actually want to push that to the production. And how many of you are familiar with Fastlane? Who use Fastlane? Raise a hand. Cool. So I see that not a lot of people, which is really great, because this will be more valuable to you. So Fastlane is a set of Ruby tools that help you streamline the whole process of building the application, managing the whole process of code signing, but it's much, much more than that. So code signing is one big part, and for me it's one of the biggest reasons why I actually would use Fastlane with a plugin that's called Match. It's for the purpose of code signing and managing all the certificates and provisioning profiles within your team. Sharing that is a real nightmare. If everyone manages that with their Xcode, everyone creates all their own certificates for development, then if you're creating certificates for distribution, then you have to share those with the team, with everyone who has to use them for publishing and all that. Match removes that for you. It actually stores all the certificates and provisioning profiles in an encrypted way in a Git repository. So to get other people on your team to be able to use and produce an app with these certificates and provisioning profiles, you just need to give them access to the repository. You need to give them the decryption key. It's a symmetric key. So it's very easy. You can take a look at codesigning.guide to read a little bit more about that, and also about potential security vulnerabilities, which there aren't many actually. And Fastlane, besides the whole code signing, which is in my opinion very, very nice, it has a lot of nice plugins out of the box. So you can build Ionic apps. It uses underneath, it uses the Ionic CLI. It has Cordova plugin also to easily release Cordova applications, but it has much, much more. You can even run the app and make screenshots to upload them to the App Store. You can upload debug symbols to Sentry. You can use it to distribute to Microsoft App Center or directly to Google Play Store or App Store Connect. And if there aren't plugins that support your specific need, you can write one because it has a pluggable architecture, so it's pretty easy to manage it. And finally, when you have Fastlane, you can very easily set it all up to run on your local machine, to be able also to onboard other people on your team, and in a matter of hours they can be pushing to App Store because you've used Fastlane. Now, if you've set up Fastlane nicely, you can easily move that to any CI server like Azure DevOps. And I'm going to do a quick demo and show you how our project is set up in Azure. But before I do that, I want to tell you a bit more about some of the Azure DevOps features, because previously I've used it in conjunction with other suites like Atlassian suite with Jira, Bitbucket, Confluence, and all that. But for the purpose of this presentation, we experimented with some other aspects of Azure DevOps, and we were checking out if it makes sense to use it for other parts of your project too. And the first thing is what they call boards, and it's basically an issue tracking system. It's pretty simple because it has 3 types of work items. There's an epic, there's an issue, there's a task. I don't know what the task is for because it doesn't appear anywhere on the Agile boards. But with epics and issues, you can do mostly anything. You can organize in hierarchies, you can link them. Practically Jira, but a little bit simpler, or U-Track. So I don't see a lot of use cases where it wouldn't suit needs for even a big project. The next part of Azure DevOps is obviously repositories. Microsoft acquired GitHub. I think they right now have some nice knowledge around that part in their company, and they're handling the repositories pretty well. Actually, I haven't seen pushes going so fast into any repository previously, like to Azure DevOps. You can create as many repositories as you want, so you can have like under one DevOps project, you can have the back end, the front end, you can have some NPM packages, for example, if you're sharing code between front and back end, and you can actually publish them to artifacts, which I show last. The most interesting part for us are the pipelines. Obviously, this is the CI server on Azure DevOps. It's very similar to anything you may have used previously, like Travis or Circle Cloud CIs, where you configure the whole build process with YAML file. So you store the configuration in code, which is really great for sharing that, and with the team working with that, versioning that, seeing what works and what fails. The good thing about that is what I will show you in a second is actually that it has this nice UI to use some actions that are already implemented there. So if there's a lot of them out of the box, so you don't need to, for many things, you don't need to write custom scripts like Node scripts or Bash scripts or whatever to do the things, because they already implemented that on their end. Of course, that ties you to the platform. I know, like for a fact, I've seen that caring too much about porting between different platforms doesn't necessarily pose a huge challenge, because you rarely do that, and planning and architecting for that is in many cases a waste of resources. Finally, yeah, there are also test plans, which is interesting because you can also manage the work of QA people there. You can write test scenarios, you can record test runs. So in regards to the process I'm describing, this can be also very helpful. And finally, the artifacts, where you can publish NPM packages, NuGet packages, Maven packages, Python packages, whatever you want, and distribute it. And finally, we have a short code demo. I don't want to go too much into the details because the link that you're seeing here is an open source DevOps project. So you can actually go in, you can clone our repository, you can create your own free Azure project and just push it there, and you'll be able to set it all up. And if you have problems, you can reach out to us, because it's really it's plain and simple. But I want to show you just quickly how it looks like in Azure DevOps, and how you can look at that. So basically, as you can see here, you have this project with all these different features, including like boards, when we can take a look at the tasks that we've been working on. These are like the work items. You can look at them from like an Agile board perspective as well. The interesting part is here. These are the pipelines. And here we have one particular pipeline for this presentation. This is basically a pretty simple workflow that you can see, and it basically builds the whole application, deploys it to Microsoft App Center, both for Android and iOS platforms. And as you can see, it's like 39 lines long. It's pretty simple, but there's additional configuration that goes for it with the fast lane, so fast files, gem files, all the stuff that needs to happen there, which you can look at in the repository. And as you can see, we are using App Center. We use it for QA purposes because using TestFlight or Google Play Store isn't the perfect solution. It's not an easy way to version different builds or name the different build versions and all that. So using App Center is much more convenient, and I think that for 2 apps it's completely free. Azure actually comes with quite a nice subscription package and a good free tier. And I'm not in any way associated with Microsoft, just full disclosure. But I like that product. I think that, yeah, you can take a look at the code and take a look at the different areas to check out how you can build it. So it's a pretty simple example. And in this example, we're also using Capacitor. So it's a little bit different than the pipelines we used to set up with Cordova. With Cordova, you had to use the Ionic, you could use the Ionic plugin for Fastlane. Before it existed, we had to use manual builds, like dig in really deep into the whole process. And we're using React here, but it's a very basic React app, so we just cloned the one of the default templates for Ionic. Okay. So you can take a look at that demo later too. And I want to just wrap up. I described today some very common bottlenecks in the development process that focus on the last part, almost like testing, making sure that everything fits. And I discussed the ideal continuous delivery process that I like to use so that we can assure and have a bulletproof quality assurance process for our application. And I also shared some of the tool sets that I used to do that. Thanks a lot. If you have any questions, you can ask them right now. Actually, you can. We have still some time for that. And I just also want to mention that we're hiring for Ionic developer roles. So if you're interested in working with us or our clients on some interesting Ionic projects or other JavaScript projects, just hit us on jobs@itcraftship.com. Thanks.
Any questions for Max? If no, thank you very much, Max. And I would like to thank you all for attending this event. I hope you had fun, and I hope you learned something that you can use on your daily basis in your job. My tip for you is to check Ionic Poland fan page and the meetup page. So you will be able to find the recordings from today's meeting, also source code from Max's presentation, and probably other presentation as well. I would also like to tell you that we would like to have next meetup in about 2 months. That we will also talk about Ionic, maybe other hybrid mobile development approaches. So I hope you will find some time to join us. Maybe you have some interesting topic to share. So it will be great to have you as a speaker. What can I say more? We got some pizza ready. You can grab some drinks. You can have some networking with us, with the speakers, or with any other participants. And okay, I got one last thing that ITCraftship team prepared some small gifts for you, so you will be able to have it from my team. Thank you all one more time, and I hope to see you soon.